is now. What are we waiting for? What are we waiting? Time waits for no one. We must stand for what's right. All the children of the world, we should not shed no blood tonight. Can't you see what the people do? How they make the case. You may say peace to me, I may say assalamu alaikum too. The world is now. What are we waiting for? What are we waiting for? The world is now. What are we waiting for? Hey, you're our witness. Come down and say the truth. You are a witness. Oh, tonight you might be the judge and the jury. The world is now. What are you waiting for? The world is now. What are we waiting for? Everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. Everybody feels loved. Tell the reason why. Let me explain this to you. This is what happened. One finger pointing out. Four come back. More come back around. Maybe this crime belongs to you. Oh yeah.
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. We're broadcasting live from George Floyd Square. We have declared this to be George Floyd Week. Special thanks to our sponsor here for this special series, Kowalski's Markets, and I have the pleasure of opening the show today with an interview with one of the principals, the owners, the president of Kowalski's Market. But before I bring Mary Kowalski in, I want to thank you who are listening across any of the social media platforms. We're streaming live to YouTube, to Twitter, to LinkedIn, and to Facebook. And we have been broadcasting all week long at KFAI. You know, our show is normally every Tuesday. The station has preempted programming every day except for today. So this show is not being presented live today, Thursday, on KFAI. It will be presented as a broadcast on Tuesday coming up. So all week long, from Monday through Saturday, George Floyd Week, here on the Conversation with Al McFarlane. We're talking to people from here, from around the world, asking where you were, what it means to you, what your feelings are, where we've come from as a community, as a people, as human beings, and where we must go. I invite any of you who are listening now across any of the social media platforms to join the conversation. How do you do that? Just put a comment in the comment section. I see Michelle is there. I see Charles Neal, AKA DA Urban, is there. Thank you for your note, Chaz Neal, and thank you, Michelle. And others of you who are there, please drop a note in the comment. Let us know who you are, where you are. Get a comment, a thought, a feeling. If you agree or disagree, it's all good. We respect you and your voice, and we want to make sure that we have done our job in lifting your voice, adding to the dialogue. Remnant Girl, thank you for joining. All of you guys, call somebody else and let them know that we're live right now, and we want them to be part of what we call a robust conversation. Well, let me begin by thanking my brother Wayne. Wayne opened up with a song that we used to use as the theme when we're doing the program in studio at KFAI over on West Bank. And what a powerful message. The message, the world is now, what are you waiting for? And that message rings in my heart, it rings in my soul, it keeps me motivated. And I ask myself the question, if now is the time, Al McFarlane, what are you doing? What are you waiting for? Because time waits for no one. Now is the time. It's your time, it's my time, it's our time to create a community of future that serves all of us and serves humanity differently and better. It's possible. We can do it. The world is now. Well, let me bring in my first guest, and that's Mary Kowalski, the owner and president of Kowalski's Markets. Everybody knows the brand. Mary Ann, good afternoon. Welcome to the conversation. How are you doing?
I'm fine, Al. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good.
You know, and
Good.
I'm grateful to KFAI and grateful to our friends over here at Listen to a Studio for letting us use the space to do our broadcast and podcast from. And I'm thankful to you and Kowalski's for supporting us in presenting these programs, not only this week, but also in the news coverage that will follow for the next several weeks out of the interviews that we're doing live here from George Floyd Square. Let me ask you, Mary Ann Kowalski, where were you in November, on November 22nd, 1963, I think was the year that John Kennedy was killed? Do you remember that day?
I certainly do. Yep.
What was happening in your life at that
I was
time?
19 and I was downtown St. Paul in an office that I was working in.
And what was the impact of that? What was the impact of that event on you? What was the impact?
Unbelief, in belief. I couldn't believe that happened, and that it was no, I disbelief is all I can say. I watching it certainly afterwards and hearing about it and knowing about it was still, I never left anything, had any other feeling than disbelief. This cannot happen here in America. Yeah.
And then fast forward to April 4th, I think 1968,
Yes.
Dr. King is killed.
Yes.
Do you remember where you were at that time?
I was actually home watching television I think it was late afternoon. I can't remember when I was watching. And I looked away and I was watching whatever was happening there. And when I came back, he'd been shot where I was watching. So I don't know if that was a video or if that was live, to tell you the truth, but I know exactly where he was, and it was the same thing of this is all I can say. I was angry. I was sad. It was a lot of those feelings.
So those are seismic events that really impacted all of us as Americans, wherever we
Yes.
were. I remember exactly where I was. I was home sick that day from high school in Kansas City when President Kennedy was killed. And I was living and at home in Worthington, Minnesota. I was actually in the Navy. I came home on leave, and I was standing at my parents' house in Worthington, Minnesota, when the news of Dr. King's shooting happened. And I tell this story a lot, Mary Ann. I was actually in Atlanta in the airport, heading home from Jacksonville, Florida. I looked around and I saw Dr. King standing there. He was standing there by himself with a trench coat draped over his arm, just elegant, beautiful guy.
Yeah.
And I was a young hothead at the time, Mary Ann. I wanted to be radical, wanted to be revolutionary, power to the people, protester kind of thing. And I said, I'm not going to talk to him. He represents this peace vibe that I'm not into at the moment. But then my mom's voice and my dad's voice of wisdom came back to me. He said, you know what? You have to be a decent human being. Go speak to this elder. He's a great man. And I did. And it was a conversation that was just cool. I don't remember particulars, except the feeling was, how are you? Glad to meet you. Go in peace.
Yeah.
I left Atlanta flying home to Worthington. He left Atlanta flying to Memphis to die. He was on his way to his death. And so I, looking back, see that as a gift, a phenomenal gift from him to me, just to be with him for a moment. So here we are now looking at what happened in 2020, the murder of George Floyd. How did that impact you? What has come about in your own community in person about what happened then?
I can only say that it changed me greatly. You know, I grew up I lived in a Black neighborhood growing up. It was middle class. It was beautiful. I loved all my neighbors. I was one of the only white families there, maybe two of us or three. And I never had a thought about race. You know, I mean, I could say that now, but at that time, I would never have said to somebody, I live in a Black neighborhood. I would never have said that. I just said, I live on this street.
Okay.
So that changed my perspective. You know, watching that, I was so angry watching it and seeing the tape, and I was sad and I was worried about my stores, which were in that area, and I wondered why somebody didn't do something.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized several things, I think, at that time. And that was, there needs to be a change in the police department. There needs to be a change in victims, Black victims, any victims, but particularly at that moment, it was, I'm done. This is enough. That's it. This is enough. What do we have to see? Somebody die. Yes, live on TV.
Yeah.
For probably the first time, because we see everything after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
And that was videotaped live by a phone. And I said, that's enough. That's it. That's enough. It's too much. And so where I have influence, Al, and some power is where I live my life. I can't change the country. I can't even change my city, but I can make a difference where I am with my power and influence. So that's what I've used. And so I didn't go right to, which a lot of places did, diversity.
Mm-hmm.
I went to where there is a job, everybody's equal. There's no question. So that has always been who we are. So it didn't have anything to do with that. I got to hire more Black people. I got to hire more, Indigenous people. That wasn't where I went. What I went was, what's the power and influence I have now? How can I help entrepreneurs, people that I actually have experience, skills? And so we are involved in a couple of organizations called Neon and 4AP, which works with all levels of people, but entrepreneurs to get them to market. And I am a board member of ACWI, which you are also, Al.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another way that I can immerse myself more in a culture that I don't know too much about, other than where I lived it. And that's
awesome. Take a minute, if you would, Mary Ann, to give me the Kowalski story. You've got a legendary family, and people might not know, people around the country might not know about your company. Tell your story. And if you would, take a minute. When you and I met before, you gave me a one-pager on the philosophy of business. I was so impressed. I want you to walk through that over the course of the next couple of minutes. I know you've got about 5 minutes before you have to leave. But
yes. Okay. Well, Jim and I started this, our stores in 1983 on St. Paul Avenue. Jim was working for Red Owl, which was quite a name in the Twin Cities market and outstate areas. And he had an opportunity came to get a franchise in the Twin Cities market. So that's what we did. And from there, we just continued to grow, and we're successful right away, but we had failures along the way and all of that. So I think that more of it was just who we were, that our success. Also, understanding people and being on the ground, feet on the ground, boots on the ground. So I think that that's kind of the history. Jim died 10 years ago, suddenly. And so I had to take over, and with my daughter, Chris, of course, who's always been here when she was here with Jim and I. So I think that one of the things I realized was that we don't have a language to pass this business on. And we don't, how do you take a mom and pop culture and pass that on when it's just innate? And so I've been through so many programs in my life of good leadership and how to deal with difficult people, blah, 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 blah. And so I think when I got introduced to civic organizing, And I looked at the principles and the standards and all that kind of stuff and said, this is more meaningful. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than the grocery stores. And so this is something that will resonate, I want to resonate with people. So I had to train myself. I had to learn a new language, excuse me. And I had to learn political skills, all kinds of stuff politics was a bad word. I don't think of politics as bad anymore. It's just the work of the people. We're all political. We just go to work every day, and that's our politics.
That's right.
So it was relearning democracy in its simplest form is ruled by the people. So I think that, just in understanding the real language of America and of sort of leadership, really leadership mostly, was really being able to put it down in words, teach it, learn it, teach it, educate employees that I have more power and influence where I do my everyday work. So if it's those people, whether you're 16 or 60, that work for us, go through a training program called civic organizing. And it talks about politics and power and standards and practices and common good and higher meaning and all of that. So, and I think that it really resonated with people immediately. So there wasn't good employee, bad employee. It had nothing to do with that. So that's kind of, if that's what you're asking, Al, I think
that's what I'm asking. That's it. That's a wonderful story. Okay. And what I'm taking from that, Mary Kowalski, is that there is a way to incorporate the activity of serving people's needs that reflects values of equity, that reflects values of respect, reflects values of opportunity, and it connects all of us to each other in a way that is genuine and practical. It can happen, and it does happen.
Absolutely.
Mary Kowalski, thank you so much for spending part of this time today with us. Thank you for your support.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for doing business with me at Insight News, and we look forward to having you back on this program down the road. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. McFarlane.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. We're streaming live from George Floyd Square. We're at a wonderful venue. It's called the Listen to a Studio. It's the brainchild, the work of King Demetrius Pendleton. He's here. You'll hear him in a few minutes. He's helping me organize people from the community to talk about why we're here, the reason we're here. We're here at George Floyd Square. And again, I want to talk about my brother, Wayne McFarlane, who's providing the ambience and the music. Wayne, give me 30 seconds while I praise you. To those who don't know it, Wayne is like a Superman. And to do this show 2 weeks ago, he had quadruple heart surgery, open heart surgery down at Mayo. This man is a miracle. He's a walking miracle, but he is a person doing, I believe, God's work, and he's reflecting the power of compassion, of doing. So Wayne, thank you so much, man. Do something and we'll bring our next guest up.
I need some time with you. So much, what can I do? I wanna be your cowboy, please. She was a girl that makes me feel so nice. I want to love her more than once or twice. I give her love, it was full for sure. We did not want to open no door and let no one else in, but being alone. I just dread love. I'm a cowboy, I'm coming to your town. I just dread love. Cowboy, I'm coming to your town. Every time I see you, you make my heart go wow.
Listen, let's keep rolling here. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. We're broadcasting live streaming today from the George Floyd Square. This is George Floyd Week. We have declared it so. And I want to just thank a lot of the people who have been doing the work here day in and day out, reaching out, connecting, keeping everybody in a moment of remembrance about the inequities and the challenge and the opportunity to create change, to be the change. One of the people I just met, he's a new old friend. His name is Joel Clavercamp. And he had some wonderful stories that I'm connected to because he's involved in unions. Joel, welcome to the conversation.
Hello.
How you doing?
Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. You were telling me before the broadcast that you have a life of experience of organizing young people, students in particular, for AFL-CIO. Tell me about that, first of all.
When I was 19, I got involved in politics. I found myself the youngest member of Governor Perpidge's administration. I just opened mail and answered phones, but it was a hell of a job for a 19-year-old and skipping up those Capitol steps every morning. And at some point in time when I was working for Governor Perpidge, another staff member came up to me and said, I think you'd be really good at this other job over nearby at the AFL-CIO. I think Perpidge was losing his election, or I forget what happened. It was a long time ago. And I found myself running the AFL-CIO student organization. We started pro-union clubs on college campuses, like college Democrats or college Republicans, only pro-union clubs. And I did that while I was in school and for 3 years in Minnesota. And we helped raise money and support solidarity in Poland, and raise money and visibility for South African Black trade unionists, where some of the issues that were happening at the time, aside that we used to interest students in unions, aside from voter registration and different things that were happening locally. And go ahead.
So what brings you to George Floyd Square today?
Well, from my background with working with unions and civil rights activists, I quickly learned that the organization I was working with, it was called Frontlash, this student organization of the AFL-CIO, was started by folks in the civil rights faction of the AFL-CIO. A. Philip Randolph, who organized the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, and Bayard Rustin, who organized a sister organization to what I was running. I ended up running this organization for about 7 years nationally, weaving in out of 90 unions. And when I first moved out east to do this, a friend at the A. Philip Randolph Institute, which had an office right next to mine, said, "Have you met Randolph?" And my knowledge at the time of the civil rights movement was a little sketchy, but I said, I thought he was dead. And he said, "Come on over here." And he went into a closet and pulled out an urn, and he put it in my hands. And that was the ashes of A. Philip Randolph, which was quite an experience.
Oh boy.
And
oh boy.
And the A. Philip Randolph Institute was the president was Bayard Rustin, and I would go up and down an elevator with him, and I was 25, he was 75. We didn't have a lot in common, but he would say, "How are you, young man? How goes the struggle?" And I went to his 80th birthday party where he sang opera, which is how he earned money to go to college by singing opera, and then to his apartment, and which he had this fabulous collection of art, and for the people of African art. And for the people who don't know, Bayard Rustin was the chief strategist behind the '63 March on Washington. And my mentors in the AFL-CIO were his lieutenants back then in '63. A young man named Tom Kahn, who wrote speeches for King and Rustin and others, and a woman named Rochelle Horowitz, who organized the buses that came to the March on Washington. I knew them. They were 17, 18, 19-year-olds back then, but I knew them later on when Rochelle was the political director for the American Federation of Teachers, and Tom Kahn was the international affairs director for the AFL-CIO. He bought me my first gin and tonic in DC. But anyways, I found myself up to my eyeballs with these fascinating civil rights activists that were right-hand lieutenants to Bayard Rustin.
So you've been part of history in an activist sense. And as an educator, let me ask you this question finally. When you think about the role that organizing has played in moving the country towards fulfilling its mission of democracy, of inclusion, and when you think back at the March on Washington, think forward to the uprising after the death of George Floyd, what role do citizens have? What role must citizens play in organizing and creating change by their effort and their energy? What are your thoughts? Do you condemn the people that were protesting here and around the country, or do you understand the protest? What's your feeling?
Without protest, without struggle, you don't gain your rights. In fact, I remember the head of the AFL-CIO Institute, a man named Norm Hill, who segregated beaches in Chicago as a young man with his wife, gave a great talk, which was, I've always remembered. He said, it went something like, you take, I don't remember it now, but it was, you keep what you can take, you take what you can hold, you don't get anything without struggle. Nothing is given up easily and peacefully by people who in power and who have it.
There must be struggle. Listen, thank you so much for dropping by, Joel. We appreciate taking the time to visit with us here on KFAI and here at the George Floyd Square. Set your microphone just on the table there. And Representative Mohamud Noor is joining us here. I'm having him come around, but while he's getting set up, let me talk to our host here today, Brother King Demetrius Pendleton. King, how you doing, man? And thank you again for facilitating this opportunity.
Yes. And I'd like to thank everyone for just basically logging in and also paying attention to this platform. I'd just like to want to thank Al McFarlane and Insight News for doing what they're doing. It's totally powerful. And I want to make sure that I use my platform to make sure that other people who platform perhaps was not loud enough, I want to make sure I use my small platform to amplify their voices. So I want to make sure other families were able to log in and also come here to the studio and speak their power to truth. And we have a couple of family members here as well. Also, I spoke to Amir Locke's father, and his father basically he's at work right now, so he he's really upset about that. But he wanted to say that make sure that you all please keep his families in your thoughts and prayers as well. Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you so much. Now, you've also helped me in connecting with Tashira Garraway. She was here yesterday. Great conversation. She's here again, but and you have brought two other people. Who's going to be coming up to be in today's program?
Yes, we're going to have our sister Howard Johnson's mother, Monique. She's going to come up as well. And also we're going to have Tashira Galloway to come. And, we also want to have a family member to speak to the power of that bees when their loved ones are being falsely incarcerated and doing football numbers and still hasn't gotten their rights due. So she's going to come up as well. So we're going to do that as well.
Super. Thank you so much. Then you'll get them set up for me when we go to the next segment. Let me turn now to our next guest, and that is Representative Mohamud Noor. Am I saying the first name right, Brother? Is it Mohamud?
Well, thank you so much for having me and inviting me to this important conversation as we reflect back on that day when George Floyd was murdered right here at this square in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Let me say your name properly. Tell me your name properly.
I think many people call me Muhammad, but it's Mahmoud or Mahmoud, as we call our senior Al-Qadi. So we share the same name. So Mahmoud,
Mohammed, and also Mahmoud. And but yeah, thank you for getting it correct here. So thank you for being here, and thank you for your leadership at the legislature. What are your reflections on George Floyd and on George Floyd week? Just what goes through your mind?
I think there's a little bit of an echo. Let me see if I can adjust.
You can just take the headset off and use the microphone here. I'll just give you the microphone to hold. Hold on a second.
Much easier. I can do that.
Unclip that. Just hold the mic. That's fine.
I think that's much easy.
Okay.
Anyway, if you can repeat the question, I'll
So
appreciate
the
it.
question is, what is going on in your mind when you reflect on this being the anniversary, the 4th anniversary of the murder of George Floyd here on this corner? What do you think about?
I think initially when the incident happened, the recording that happened to make sure that the whole world can watch from the public, that young woman who had the courage to ensure that it's documented and coming into my inbox, it's a huge, awakening. It's a reminder. It's a big loss to the community. This was the epicenter for uprising to making sure that something like this never happens again. We understand that it's given since after the murder of George Floyd, there were other incidents. But I think the fight that was needed, that civil rights moment and continuing to fight for justice is not something that we can take all for granted. So it's a reminder to me and all of us, even to a legislative process, the fight for justice will never end. We'll have to keep on going forward, step by step, every single day, regardless of the opposition that we may end up receiving, so that we can fight for justice for those who have been killed or murdered by unjust, system. Not only the police, but we also have some economic injustice and so many other things that we tend to forget. How did we get here? It never took one day, but then that moment to see what happened and to reflect, and even to be reminded of what the daughter of George Floyd said, "Daddy changed the world." That's right. That's what I remember every single day about this place when I go through this area.
How do we as a community navigate the anger we feel, the oppression we feel, the trauma we feel when our public servants, the police department, abuse us, number one. Number two, how do we navigate the historical oppression relationship feeling that the murder of George Floyd made clear in ways that it hadn't been before, nobody could refute. Often in the past, when something happened, it was always sort of categorized and presented in media as a one-off, an aberration. But what our community had been saying forever is this is a part of public policy, the marginalization of Black people and the oppression of Black and brown bodies. And so now that we cannot say it doesn't exist, we saw it, how does that change our actions towards our responsibility to direct government and to expect government to serve us in ways we want to be served? What do you think?
It's significant. Public policy sets the pace for everything. It's not only about the police, but it's also about how we live our lives. As I reflect back when I saw young people, multicultural, multiracial, young and old, and everyone coming together to fight for justice, to demand that justice, that was not only one thing that happened in one day and people started the uprising. It's a cumulative effect. Many things that have been neglected for many years. When you look at the injustice that happens with the police, it's one piece of that bigger puzzle. And we've seen the outcomes of police brutality. We have seen the consent decree that has happened from the state and also the federal government. And within all those things, we're going to make mistakes again because the system was never designed to serve us. And how do we fix those systems to make sure that it reflects the need of the people that we represent? Look at the data. I think we can talk about the data, the educational outcome for our children, the facilities that we have that support our children during the out of school time. When you look at the employment opportunities that exist and those opportunities for economic, for businesses, the lack of capital, lack of home ownership, lack of other things, it's a cumulative effect. It's not one or the other. And from a policy perspective, I think the failure of the law enforcement is significant, because law enforcement is supposed to be the place that you go to, a place of trust, and that trust has been lost. It's going to take a lot of years to really build that trust. And it's going to take all of us coming together to really address that issue when it comes to police brutality and also the systemic injustice that exists. We're one of the few states in the House of Minnesota when we declared, the injustice and everything else, the discrimination, everything collectively, that those things really impact our lives. We passed a resolution to address that issue, and that happened during the uprising. Unfortunately, it was also one of the significant challenges that we are facing as a community with the COVID-19 pandemic, which significantly also impacted our communities. We lost a lot of our loved ones through that process because of the inequities that exist, the things that we understand. It's not only one or the other. We may see things that are happening directly, but there are also hidden parts of the pain and the agony from mental health, things that you have been advocating for the capital, to make sure that we've got programs that really serve our communities, particularly the African-American community, the Black community in the state of Minnesota. It's a struggle, and that struggle continues today.
I'm the son of an immigrant. My father is Cuban-born Jamaican who came here. I have an experience of being what I call multinational, multicultural, from the Caribbean, and also from my African-American lineage. How have these events, both the pandemic and the George Floyd uprising, I'll call it that, shaped the set of relationships between immigrant and existing communities, particularly between Africans? And by Africans, I mean Somalis, Liberians, Nigerians who are here. Somalis, the largest group, and have made the most significant impact. You are elected in the state legislature, and they have representation. You have representation at city level and at state level, and changing the business character. Also, the Latino community has emerged in a massive way. So what has all this meant for how we both acknowledge and collaborate to create change? Does it mean that one community has to disadvantage the other, or is there a common ground and a common goal that we seek?
I think there's a common ground and common goal. Number one is to also look at the historic injustice that African Americans have faced in the United States in general. I know that historic is something that we have to reflect back. As I've told many times, we may have come in different ways and shapes and forms, but the underlying issue is we have seen the injustice done more to the African Americans. They were grabbed and stolen from the land of Africa to be brought here without their will. And that is significant. And I think we're standing on the shoulders of those who fought for civil rights in the United States, especially for the African Americans, regardless of any immigration background you have. That struggle has never ended. Right now, immigrants are being used as a tool, as a political tool. We've had it through the Capitol. Every name that they can call an immigrant person happened even in the state of Minnesota, and dehumanizing the immigrant community. But that struggle has to be grounded of what has happened, right here. As the mother of George Floyd, we have seen the front line, those young hijabi women who are standing. I can see the photo behind you. Mm-hmm. That is a reminder that those individuals who were born and raised here feel the pain, the pain that they see their own brothers and sisters have gone through. The pain that the injustice that is happening on our streets, the pain of lack of opportunity that is happening every single day. So that collectiveness and that common ground, the common sense of how we can collectively come together is something that is much needed. The larger picture is we can all overcome. Mm-hmm. There's no challenge that we cannot overcome, but it requires us to have that collective mindset as we come together, whether you're an immigrant or an African-American or a Latino, Latinx. The point that is we have a great power in the state of Minnesota, and that power is our collective voice. And we need to be included in that collective governance in any structure of government, whether it's the city hall or the Capitol at the state in St. Paul, or whether it's in Congress, we can influence that system. We can fight for things that we want, but we have to understand our power is within us and we have to use it the right way.
Brother Mohamud Noor, Representative Noor, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for your leadership and your service to the community. Let's keep this conversation going. Last question, what priorities did you want to share about the legislative session that just ended last week? What's your report?
I think there's so many pieces within that legislative wins that we've had this year, regardless of how it ended, as the opposition wanted just to filibuster so that we cannot take care of our communities. First of all, the paid family medical leave, that is going to be a significant help for our communities who don't have it, while the bigger corporation, everyone else gets a paid family medical leave, which is going to start next year. The Uber and Lyft drivers now can breathe with the 20% increase, and also this is the nation leading law that we passed in the state of Minnesota. And so that was a big win. We've also put a lot of efforts to address the social needs of the community when it comes to mental health, when it comes to substance use disorder, when it comes to homelessness. Those are critical issues as we look into the future, including the waiver that we're trying to get Medicaid for those who are right now in jail, who are struggling. It's time for us to also close the housing gap. This is the year. The resources are there. Please make sure you stay tuned to all these opportunities that exist within the state of Minnesota.
Thank you so much, brother.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, we'll talk to you later. Unplug the microphone there. And then Wayne, give us some music while we transition. I want to bring our next guest up to the balcony. Have them in all three, these two chairs. Put one more chair up there. Thank you.
Every time you see your face, I smile. Thought I was losing you to LA for a while. I'm just a dreadlock cowboy. I'm coming to your town. I'm just a dreadlock cowboy. I'm coming to your town. Here I am, falling in love again. What can I do? Hope you understand it's true. I'm the one for you and you're the one for me. Dreadlock cowboy coming to you. Dreadlock cowboy I remember when we used to sit in a government yard in Trenchtown. All in all those crazy hypocrites living amongst the good people we all know. No. Good friends we've lost, good friends we have known along the way, yeah. In this great, great future, you cannot forget your past. So let's just move along. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything is 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 gonna be alright.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is the Conversation with Al McFarlane. We're continuing with our live broadcast, our live stream from George Floyd Square here in South Minneapolis. We're at Listen to a Studio, thanks to Brother King Pendleton, King Demetrius Pendleton, for making the space available and helping us get people here. On the phone, on FaceTime, we're trying to work this out, is Amir Locke's father. Introduce yourself, brother, and thank you for joining the call.
Thanks for allowing me to be a part of this discussion. I am Andre Locke, the father of Mary Locke, the young man who was brutally murdered by the Minneapolis police SWAT team on February the 2nd, 2222 in the wee hour mornings as he rests peacefully at a relative's home.
Let me ask my producer if he's hearing it okay. Cooper, is that working okay or not? Yes, it's fine. So keep going. Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
So we are collectively still in the fight of our lives to pursue justice for my son, Amir Locke. Amir didn't deserve what happened to him. Amir was in the right place at the right time. Some people would say he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. No, Minneapolis PD was in the wrong place at the wrong time. As a matter of fact, my son had nothing to do with anything that was taking place.
Tell the story. What happened? Remind people what happened that day.
So what we learned, because we didn't know anything either, what we learned was that everything has something to do with a murder investigation that was taking place in St. Paul that may have had something to do with Amir's cousin, so which is my nephew. So, and his youngest cousin, who he did not hang out with at all. So the interesting part overall is that the Minneapolis PD went into that unit knowing that the subject that they were looking for was not in that unit. So it was only a search for property. So they misled the public by making it seem like it was a warrant for a person. And it was never a warrant for a person. It was only a warrant for property. That's what they gave us. And which was more outrageous to our family after learning that that's what it was. Because it's only one way into that building and one way out. There were 7 stories in the sky. So it was no place for them to go. All they had to do was either bang that door like they would normally do and announce themselves properly, and my son would be alive to this day. Amir Locke did not deserve what happened to him. Amir was a beautiful person. He was a beautiful son. He enjoyed learning. He enjoyed teaching. Also, he actually started a company called Saving the Youth LLC. Saving the Youth LLC before his death. His goal was to use music, art, and also fashion to help the youth like himself. So he was into the music that they're into now. So, and that was going to be his way of reaching them. And I was all for it because I'm musically inclined myself. So Amir, he gets that naturally. So the thing is that we collectively, his mother, her family, my family, and all of us in the entire Twin Cities, with families supporting families against police brutality, we're all fighting collectively to get justice for each of our loved ones. And Amir is just a tip of the iceberg. George Floyd was the opening, the eye opener for the entire world to see, but to shine a light on the brutality that takes place in Minneapolis with Black and brown people. Also, during the course of us fighting for justice for Amir, we've had a law passed. We was able to change some of the restrictions in regards to no-knock warrants. It became law August the 1st, 2023. They can no longer do no-knock warrants. The only way that they're able to perform these warrants is if there's a hostage situation or something like that. But in honor of my son, the no-knock restriction ban is throughout the entire state, so they can no longer run up in Black and brown people homes.
I'm gonna ask brother King Demetrius to sit in for a second and to interact with the other guests who are here, because I think this makes it really close and really family. And King, I'm going to stand by and let you handle this and introduce and keep the conversation going. You can just hold the mic and talk.
Yeah, and also, buddy, can you please tell people about the situation, how the media basically spin the narrative about your son and try to vilify him after they knew they basically brutally murdered him, an innocent man, and also talk about how your family knew that he was a really, really hard sleeper as well.
Okay, yes. So let me start with Amir being a hard sleeper first. Just like every young person, Amir sleeps with the cover over his head, and he still sleeps on his stomach. I knew before we walked into the police station to witness the footage, the famous footage that they put out to the public. I knew that when we saw that footage, that the city was going to be in an uproar because he was asleep, and to see them kick the couch, because I know how hard of a sleeper he is. So for that officer, I'll say those officers because they were there collectively, to kick that couch and to startle my son, which is what made him reach for the weapon, his weapon that had nothing to do with anything, that legal firearm. Once he reached for that, one of the officers opened fire first. He opened fire first, and then he said, gun. So Amir was definitely a hard sleeper. I know that he wouldn't have been able to hear that. If they'd only banged at that door, they probably would have awakened Amir, which would have gave Amir notice. And we wouldn't be going through this right now. But what we would be going through is fighting for justice for each of the family members that are sitting there that have already lost loved ones. So we will be in this fight with them. People don't know what this is like until it actually happens to them. We always see things from afar. We see it from afar and we say, oh man, that is terrible. We don't like it from dealing with past situations, from seeing what Blacks have gone through, African Americans have gone through for centuries. And from city to city, it's the same thing. It's the same exact thing. So how the media put a spin on things is that they kept showing a weapon that had nothing to do with anything. Yeah. They kept showing this weapon to villainize my son when they didn't have the facts. Right. It wasn't until I put the facts out there that he didn't have anything to do with anything, that he was asleep. It was until I put the facts out there that people started to open their eyes. So, but we live in a society now that 15 minutes of fame, everyone gets their 15 minutes of fame. Through Instagram, TikTok, and all of these social media sites. Everybody wants to be noticed. So, with that being said, everyone's attention span is like this. So everyone's attention span is short. So it's from one story to the next. So Amir was his story was there, but what happened is that the war in Iraq is what took the attention off of Amir's story.
You know what?
So I do apologize. The war in Ukraine. What's happening here with Amir now?
Okay, but we're running out of time, and we really would like to finish this conversation with you again. We have two more people on the panel. We have Monique Johnson and also Howard Johnson, mother, along with Tashir Galloway, and along with our sister Lakeisha Armstrong. And we want to give them some time to speak about their loved ones as well. Can we talk about your loved one, Howard Johnson, who was tragically killed by St. Paul police officers, and can you just speak of that magnitude?
Everyone, blessings to each of you. I'm at work right now, and I love you all, and thank you for this opportunity, and I will convene with you all later. Thank you so dearly.
Love you, buddy.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye now.
And let me say this, Demetrius, thank you for being a capable host and keeping this conversation going. We are streaming live. We want people that are listening live anywhere in the world to drop a comment, let us know where you are. But this program will broadcast next week, Tuesday, on KFAI. And what I want to do, producer Cooper, is play the close right at the 1 hour mark, but then continue the conversation for another 15 minutes or so we can get the voices of our sisters here and their families in the stream. So go ahead. So go ahead.
All right. So again, my name is Monique Johnson, and I am the mother of Howard Johnson, who was killed by the St. Paul police December 5th, 2022. Howard was 24 years old. He was ran over and then shot by the St. Paul Police Department. They justified his killing by saying that he was carjacking somebody, which we have no evidence of that as of yet. And also, all of the cars that were out there, there had to be, 40 or more cars. The one car that did not have a dash cam was the car that ran my son over and then shot him, which doesn't make any sense to me. Am I forgetting anything? They also did not give me the any of the body cam or the dash cam footage until about a year later, a year after his murder. And
also, Monique just ended up winning a lawsuit against the BCA along with 5 other families because these public entities, government entities, are refusing to release information that is owing to the families. I'm currently, for the father of my son, Justin Tigan, who was brutally beat to death and thrown in a trash dumpster by the same department, St. Paul Police Department, and had the whole thing covered up, just like her son. I'm currently fighting for the data that is owed to my family. So Monique was not able to get her footage for over a year after her son was killed. And then she still was denied complete justice because part of that footage was not there. So they're editing footages, they're deleting footages, taking footages away from the actual case. All of this stuff is happening in our cases, being swept under the rug. You guys never heard of Howard Johnson, who was shot and ran over by the St. Paul police. There's no person that ever came forward to say that they were carjacked. They have no person. When we watch the video, we see no person there that's being carjacked. And this young man was literally ran over, shot, and handcuffed as he was laying on the ground. He couldn't breathe, dying, and they handcuffed him as he was dying. So this is what we face as Black people here in Minnesota. Yeah.
Howard also left behind. Then they were 4. This August they will be 6 years old. He left 2 boy twins, Jalen and Jaden. So they will have to grow up without their father.
So Monique is a part of our group along with Amir Locke's father, the organization I started, Family Supporting Families Against Police Violence, just helping to provide support to the families and try to seek answers, justice, provide financial support and all kinds of support, whatever we can. The goal was to be the support that I didn't have when Justin was stolen away from me and my son. And we're 5 years in now, just fighting together in solidarity. We are considering my sister here, Nikisha, who's with us. We feel that whether someone is killed brutally on the street or whether they are locked up for a crime that they did not commit, it's all police brutality. And so we have my sister Nikisha, who's here with us today. The father of her children was wrongfully incarcerated. And I would love if Nikisha speaks to that.
Hello, my name is Nikisha Armstrong. I have a loved one who was actually my kid's father, who was wrongfully incarcerated in 2007. He was convicted of aiding and abetting a drive-by murder. And actually the detective falsified evidence and basically stated that he had a Miranda recording stating that Deontez gave him his phone number, which we hired investigators after the conviction. We hired investigators to prove that there were no Miranda interviews done by Deontez. The judge signed off on a notary basically stating they don't have that evidence. The police department stated that they don't have that evidence as well. So we're actually still fighting for his wrongful conviction. Not only was he convicted of aiding and abetting, he was the only one convicted. There was actually no shooter convicted nor charged with the incident. So we're fighting for his freedom today. His case is actually in the hands of the CRU and the Innocent Project also contact us regarding his case. So that's the way out for.
We'll just keep going. We'll keep going. So let me ask all of you how this George Floyd week brings either memories or encouragement or despair to you as the community is looking at remembering what happened here on this corner. How does it make you feel, and how does that remind you of what you have gone through and are going through?
I have a lot of emotions, like just dealing with what happened with George Floyd, seeing what happened with him, seeing what happened with multiple family members that we are in connection with. Like I have a lot of emotions, like a lot of heartfelt emotions, but then a lot of happiness that comes with that as well, just due to the fact is like somebody actually got convicted of that. We fight for so long for justice, and we finally got it within that situation. So I don't know. I have a lot of mixed emotions about it.
I think I have a lot of mixed emotions about it too, but like she said, it's a blessing and a curse, because George Floyd has brought about a lot of change and unity. So that's a blessing. It's just sad that he had to lose his life because of behind the hands of the police. I am grateful that they did get convicted, and that's the change that I'm talking about. The convictions, like that's just one of many to come, because we're gonna keep fighting until we get some justice.
For me, it's a mixed emotions because there's a lot of other families that led up to George Floyd. And there's multiple families such as Howard Johnson that happened after George Floyd. So for me, it's like I'm sitting here watching people pretty much perpetuate the same behavior even after George Floyd. And I would really appreciate if these people acknowledge all of the harm that they have caused to our communities and to people that specifically look like me. Because one thing I always think about is they didn't have a choice but to acknowledge George Floyd. We had buildings on fire, we had riots, we had national coverage, you know what I mean? So they didn't have a choice but to hold that officer accountable because it was in the face of the world. And if it hadn't been, it would have been business as usual, like it was for me and like it was for Howard Johnson's family and his mother. It would have been the same results, just like they lied on George Floyd and said that he died from a medical emergency while in officers' care. Don't you think that has happened in a whole bunch of other cases? The only difference is that there was a Facebook Live that got national attention.
If either of you have been down to the Say Their Name Cemetery.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about that, because I think people need to know what that is. When you leave this building and go out and turn left just a few feet, you can look about a block away into a park area and you see a field of white tombstones. It reminds you of what you might see on Memorial Day or Veterans Day at Fort Snelling, but it's not Fort Snelling. This is the middle of our neighborhood. What is that? Talk about what that is and what it represents. Say Their Names Cemetery. Go ahead.
What it represents to me in my mind is lynchings, the bodies. Each tombstone is a body. That was a human being that was actually, their life was stolen by law enforcement, because every single tombstone that's in there was somebody that was stolen by law enforcement. So every tombstone in my mind represents a body, represents a human being. And all I can think of is that we talk about what's out there in Fort Snelling. That shows us that we're at war right here in our communities. That these people, and if you think about the training of the police, I remember watching videos where they go for their training. It's fear-based training that they go to, and it's almost like they're preparing to go to war. But what are you going to war with? People that are families that are living in communities that might have a mental health crisis. They may have something just go wrong, and their job is not to come in our communities and prepare for war. It's to protect and serve. But a lot of times it looks like they're protecting and serving themselves, not the people in the community. And one thing I want to say is people give me a hard time because I do lead a lot of the protests and organize a lot of the protests, and I'm on the front lines. But I get told, oh, you hate the police. I do not hate the police. I believe that right is right and wrong is wrong in any profession. I used to be a CNA, a nursing assistant, and I remember seeing a nursing assistant that was doing wrong to other elderly people where I worked. And I had to turn her in because for me, right is right and wrong is wrong, no matter what profession you work in. And so when I stand up on righteousness, when I stand up for human life, it has nothing to do with the profession that someone is in. It has to do with the fact that we walk down the street to a cemetery where there's bodies, and all of those people, those were not justified killings, those tombstones that are out there.
And just so we're clear, they're not actually buried there, but this is an installation to drive the point home. And you owe it to yourself to drive by there. And in fact, hopefully Saturday or Friday, we'll have a song that my brother Wayne was in called Enough is Enough. And the scene of that song by one of Wayne's artists, Ryan Listman, is that Say Their Name Cemetery. And the cry in the song is enough is enough. So Monique, same question to you. When you visited, when you first saw the Say Their Name Cemetery, what were your thoughts? What were your feelings?
Heartbroken, because it's crazy that hundreds of years later, we're still in oppression. And to me, a lot of the police are like white supremacy. And they look at us brown and dark-skinned people as we are the enemy when we're not. And it breaks my heart that I have children, a child that I have lost, and I have grandchildren that I have to raise up in this corrupt world. It just it breaks my heart. It just breaks my heart.
Well, listen, we're going to wrap this up. I want to thank all of you and those who were here today participating in this discussion. And I want to invite everybody to come through tomorrow. Tomorrow, Friday at 1 o'clock, we continue live from George Floyd Square. We're broadcasting here at King Demetrius Pendleton Studio. It's called Listen to Us Studio at 3730 Chicago Avenue, Studio C. Thanks to King Demetrius for making the space available and for supporting this conversation. It's a critical conversation, one that we think we have to make sure we don't forget, that we have to keep ourselves focused. And our goal is freedom. Our goal is the liberation of our people. Our goal is justice. And I think that your voices are critical components of our search for justice. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Can I also say
Please.
thank you to Shira Garraway, founder of Family Supporting Families. She has been there for me and multiple other families. I know she's been there for me every step of the way, and I don't know what I would have done without her. Thank you to Shira.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, guys, listen, I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Thank you, Wayne McFarlane. We'll see you tomorrow as well. Take care.